Hi everyone, I'm Brad Keelor, Director of the Geo-Institute. Depending on when you're watching this, the 200th episode of Director's Cut is either coming up really soon or it's just passed. Either way, yes, it's time for another contest. To celebrate 200 episodes of the show, we're turning it over to you, the viewers, for a special show in the new year, in early 2025. Just pick your favorite episode of the show and submit a question that I didn't ask that person. We'll put together a special episode with the 10 best questions, and of course, everyone whose question is selected will win a prize. So yeah, the fact that there are 200 episodes of Director's Cut out there probably means there are some you haven't watched yet. You might want to get on that so that you submit the best possible questions. We're counting on you. Keep watching our social media and our newsletter for info and details on the contest. And of course, thanks for watching Director's Cut. I am Brad Keelor. He is Richard Bathurst. Coming up next on the 200th episode of Director's Cut, you're going to hear the story of his research career and his favorite holiday tradition.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and the children listen to hear sleigh bells.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every week, except a week or two at the holidays and during the summer, I talk to a different Geo-Institute member who has stories to tell. Some of them are personal, some are professional, but all of them are fun. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, well, head over to geoinstitute.org after you watch this today. You will find out so many things when you're there, including that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And if you like what you see today, and look around, how could you not? You should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. This may be the single biggest episode of Director's Cut we've ever had in terms of events, all happening at one time. It's episode number 200. It's one of the holiday episodes. I hope people have figured that out. I'm not just wearing these elf glasses because they looked good. And we welcome in Richard Bathurst, faculty member, professor at Royal Military College of Canada, who is a lot of things right now. He is the 2024-2025 Cross USA lecturer. He is the brand spanking new editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Geomechanics. And he's going to be featured as a geo legend in an upcoming issue of GeoStrata. That is a lot of stuff, all for one episode. Richard, thank you for being here to do this.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. This is truly an honor. This is going to be lots of fun. So thanks for thinking about me.
Of course. Well, as I said there, we had all kinds of reasons to think about you. It would have been hard to avoid. We have 10 questions for you, the same way that we do for everybody every week. And we start with one of the ones that we ask everybody. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
Okay. Well, I'm a professor emeritus at the Royal Military College of Canada in Kingston, Ontario, and I also have a cross appointment at Queen's University. It's in the same town. Now, I'm retired on paper for 5 years now, but I'm fully active. I have a group of PhD students and postdocs that I work with every day. And most people know me for my research in areas related to soil reinforcement, LRFD calibration, and reliability-based design. You said job, and I just want to clarify that I don't believe that I've ever had a job. To me, a job is somewhere where you get paid to do something that you wouldn't otherwise do. And I'm happy to say that every day of my life at RMC, and currently it's wonderful time. I enjoy coming into work every day, and working with great people here, and also with many collaborators around the world. So that's my job description.
Something I didn't put into the questions, and now I realize was a horrible oversight, is a question about Queens and RMC being in the same city. This is not a situation like UCLA and USC being in LA, or Temple and Villanova being in Philadelphia. Kingston is not that big, and yet you've got these two universities right there together. What does that mean for you guys? For one, for collaboration, but I think just in terms of sharing resources and stuff like that too. What does that do for you?
Well, it's been very lucky. The two institutions are very close together physically, and we were able to form what we call the Geoengineering Center at Queen's RMC. And this happened when Kerry Rowe went from Western to Queen's, and he and I decided that we would form this group, and we gathered about 14 professors from both institutions across civil engineering, mining, engineering, geology, to present ourselves as a collegial, coherent group. And that has been a signature feature of this group. We work together every week during the school terms. We have a seminar series where we bring in people from around the world, or we give lectures ourselves to students and postdocs and professionals from the community. So it is a very unique group of individuals. And I must admit, most people, when they visit us, are very impressed about how we all get along, because historically, sometimes not all academics get along.
Oh, I like that. And I'm glad we were able to work that in. And we'll put a link to your center down in the show notes so that people can check that out. And maybe it will inspire other people who share their town with another campus or another school. We have to get to some of the fun questions here. One that I was thinking about recently, and I don't know why, maybe because I've done this a lot in my life, is when people tell me no, sometimes I do stuff anyway. And can you, Richard, think about a time when this happened to you, when you rebelled and did something that you believed in anyway?
Have you been talking to my wife? She's the one that's constantly giving me advice about, doing more exercise and traveling less. And of course, I do the opposite. But I can remember when I was in high school, which was a long time ago, my dad, who is a civil engineer, he said to me, "Son, you should get a degree in environmental engineering and law." Okay, this is really before environmental engineering was in our vocabulary. So how great was that advice? And of course, I didn't take it. I immediately enrolled in a mining engineering degree program at Queen's, and then I saw the light, and I went into civil engineering, actually after having taken a course in soil mechanics. And I found that the soil mechanics course was the most challenging of all the subjects that were being delivered to us. And also it was a little bit of black art. And those two things intrigued me. And I promptly quit mining and went into civil engineering. And here I am today.
So we've got a couple of lawyers in the membership, among them Rod Salgado at Purdue and Tim Stark at Illinois. How do you think getting a law degree would have shaped your career? I mean, do you think it was a process thing for you, that it would make you think differently? Do you think it would have changed the job that you ended up doing, or something else?
Well, I think my dear old dad was just thinking that how he would like to have a wealthy son. Myself, I really didn't give it much thought, because I've come from a line of architects and surveyors and civil engineers. And I think it was in my DNA that ultimately I'd be an engineer. And even though I fought against being a civil engineer, initially I fell into it as I should have.
And you got there in the end. And that's a perfect segue for our next question here. The third question is always the research question. And we're going to do something a little bit different today. Rather than talking about a specific piece of research or something, we're going to have you tell your research story. I did not know until we were talking before we started recording here that you started out in industry and then ended up a faculty member, and now for over 4 decades. So tell that story. How'd you start out and how'd you end up at RMC?
Yes, well, to me, I think it's an interesting story and a little bit unusual. I went to Queens. And when I graduated, as an undergraduate, there weren't many jobs. So I did a master's in soil mechanics. And after that, I went to Golder Associates, which is now WSP. And at that time, Golder was the place that all young graduate students wanted to work. And I actually ended up in the Toronto head office for 3 years. And I was working with the greats like Jack Crooks, John Sachuk, and Victor Milligan. I learned my geotechnical engineering and soil mechanics at the knees of these guys. And that experience has informed me since that time. I learned, practical soil mechanics and geotechnical engineering at that time, and I accumulated case studies, et cetera, that I was able to use all through my undergraduate and graduate teaching. And I was very happy at Golder. But then what happened was RMC in the very early 80s was looking to expand their faculty and to develop a graduate programs and a research program. And what they did is they hired young people with a master's degree to come on staff, full salary at the lecture level position, and they were able to do a PhD at Queen's at the same time. Now, I wasn't thinking about becoming an academic, but golly, that's a good deal. And so I jumped at it, and they hired me, and I immediately began a PhD program jointly at Queen's and the University of Waterloo. And I was working in the area of micromechanics of granular assemblies. I came to RMC, and this area of research required computing power. And RMC had 2 mainframe computers that weren't doing anything. And I was able to harness that resource to do numerical simulation work in the area of particle mechanics. And it was some of the first work that was done, I'm happy to say. And in fact, my highest citations are for papers that came out of that work. But at the same time, geosynthetics came on stage. And it was a revolutionary technology. Now we're talking late 70s, early 80s. And I had a number of mentors, guys like Jerry Raymond and Peter Jarrett. And these guys said, hey, young fella, this is what you need to do. And so they introduced me to people. They helped me get some funding. And that launched me. And it was very fortunate because not many young academics actually get onto the ground floor of a new technology. So I got on the ground floor, and essentially I've ridden that wave from those early days to the present. And I just went through different stages of building full-scale structures, instrumenting them, learning how these MSE walls work, and then getting into testing, and then ultimately into probabilistic design and analysis. So just one step to another. Very, very fortuitous. And it's a little bit ironic if you think about it, because I remember when I was a freshman, I really wasn't enamored of statistics and chemistry. And of course, that's what probabilistic design is all about. And geosynthetics are polymers. And so I tell my students and my own daughter, I said, you have to work diligently at the undergraduate level, because you never know what you're going to need to know. Okay, further in life. But I've had a wonderful career, and it's still a wonderful career. I mean, I've had collaborators and colleagues from all over the world. Many of you may know Tony Allen, who recently retired from the Washington Department of Transportation. He was until recently the chair of the Foundations Committee of AASHTO. And he and I have been working together for 30 years, and he was instrumental in guiding me towards practical applied research. And we've worked together, and our work has manifested itself in new design methods that are used by engineers to design reinforced fills, etc. And there have been a number of other people like that. There's my friend Yoshi Miyata at the National Defense Academy in Japan, and many others. So that's been one of the major reward of my academic career, is meeting and working with talented people, and it continues to this day.
Oh, that's a great story. We're going to talk a little bit more, I think, later on in the show about your history as well. We got to get back to some of the fun ones here. Not that I always say they're all fun, though. So,
Yes.
It is the holiday time. People are spending a lot of time out shopping, even if they do much of it behind the screen now on their phone. People still go out into the stores. I have seen it firsthand. I know it happens. Richard, what store do you spend the most time in without ever buying anything?
It's any store that I'm with my wife.
Because you're not making the purchases?
She usually puts me in the corner somewhere, and where I'm supposed to just behave myself and wait until she's bought something. But myself, more seriously, I like computer gadget shops. I like to see what new toys I can hang off my computer. I'm a big book fan. I often will browse secondhand bookstores, of which there are several in this city. This is a very academic town, I might add. And I like books on famous people, but not movie stars. Military history, engineering, and the like. For example, I just finished a book by a very famous Pulitzer Prize author in the States, David McCulloch, on your president, past President Harry Truman. And then I'm just about to finish another book by him, which is on the construction of the Panama Canal. It's called The Path Between the Seas. And this is a wonderful book for nerds like me, because it's got a big human story, it's got a big political story, and of course it's got some juicy engineering stuff.
Well, so that's what I was going to ask. This sounds like a perfect holiday gift for the engineer in someone's life. I guess we'll put a link to that in the show notes below so that people can pick it up if they want. And it needs to have a Richard's recommendations seal on the cover or something. That's
Well, that book was also doubly interesting to me, because my wife and I'll mention this later, for holidays, we often go on boat cruises. And one of the boat cruises we went on was through the Panama Canal.
Oh, wow.
And so I was able to connect that experience to this book.
Oh, that is fantastic. And we will get to that later on in the show. This is the magic of Director's Cut. Everything just kind of comes together. We do have to ask about IJOG, the International Journal of Geomechanics. You are now the editor-in-chief. I can never remember how long the term is. I believe it's 4 years, but anyway, it's a few years that you'll be editor-in-chief. What are your plans as EIC for IJOG? What would you like to accomplish?
Well, I was very lucky because I had a training period as an associate editor under with Professor Marco Barlow in Torino, and what he did as his legacy was to increase the number of women members of the editorial board and the associate editors, and so that made the entire journal more inclusive, and that was a very important progress. What I'm seeing now, I've only been in the seat for a couple of months, but what I'm seeing is that what we need is to expand both the editorial board and the associate editors to fill some gaps. This journal has such a broad scope that sometimes when I'm trying to find an associate editor, I can't find that particular topic in their list of expertise. So that is something that I need to address. It's interesting, that journal is getting 1,300 papers a year. So every day, I'm getting these papers to do a desk check on. Sometimes 10 or 20 a day. So it's a big job, but I like it, and I was thrilled to be offered the job. I'm going to enjoy it. I think I can bring some experience to the job, and also I must say that the team, the journals team at ASCE, they're a delight to work with. They backstop you all the way and are able to give all sorts of useful advice.
I'm sure they will want to go watch this just because they see that you're the interview subject, but now they'll appreciate it even more that they got a little shout out and a bump there.
There you go.
So
I'm very political.
If I were a viewer of this here interview and I was thinking about submitting a manuscript to iJog, Richard, why should someone consider submitting?
Well, I think it has a great reputation. All the papers are screened carefully at receipt, not only by me. I mean, I get a second opinion from an expert in the field, one of the AGs. So first of all, if you get a paper published in that journal, remember you're, maybe one of 3 papers that gets published, so you should be proud. So it has a high standard, and that will add to the value of your CV. If you get published in this journal. So yes, if you got good work, we're interested.
Nice and easy, not even a hard sell on that one. The other question that we ask everybody when they come on the show is about their history with GI and ASCE. How did you first get involved with ASCE and GI?
The first thing is, there is a very close connection between the Canadian geotechnical fraternity and the American fraternity, and to be quite honest, it's a continuum, so that helps. So I've always known lots of ASCE members, that are working in geotechnical areas that I'm also interested in. But I also have attended the GI annual conferences. I was at Geo Vancouver. We were there together just recently. Also, I published a lot of papers. I think I published about 30 papers in the ASCE Journal of Geotechnical and Geoenvironmental Engineering. I think 7 or 8 more papers in iJog, and so that got me into the ASCE fold. And I really like the Journal of Geotechnical and Geoenvironmental Engineering because it has a large readership. They're high quality journals, and it's the type of journal that was perfect to disseminate the practical research that I've been doing primarily with Tony Allen. So it was a very important connection for me. So that's really how I got connected. But certainly recently, it's the connection's becoming even stronger.
I like that, the continuum. We do always say that CGS is our closest partner, and I hope that they say that about us. If not, they're cheating on us. But
Well,
but
I like to brag to people that some of um, the shows that we put on at CGS have been ported and adopted in your annual conferences as well. So there you go.
absolutely. So, as a very wise radio DJ once said, the hits just keep on coming here. Now we're going to talk about you becoming a geo legend, and it's going to be in an upcoming issue of the print Geostrata, and that will be we weren't even sure which issue it was. I hope Jim Withiam isn't watching this because he'll quiz us later. It's a big deal to get named a Geo Legend. We've been doing this for about 10, 11 years, so that means at the most there are 65 of these people that have been featured. Richard, did you ever think you'd have the word or the term Geo Legend attached to your name?
Well, absolutely not. I know many of the people that have been labeled geolegends, and to think that I would even be considered amongst that group, of course, is a great honor. And to be fair, when I started out in my career, I wasn't, that wasn't an objective. It's something that happened. People appreciate what I've done over the long term. But to be fair, also, I mean, it's nice to be recognized. And I will keep it. I'll cherish the label for the rest of my life. So thank you, folks. I don't know who voted for me, but whoever's out there, thank you so much, and it's appreciated.
That is amazing, and we'll all look forward to seeing that in Geostrata in the new year. For those who don't know much about the geography of Canada, which I think is probably the majority of Americans, unfortunately, Kingston, Ontario, where RMC is based and where Queen's University is as well, is on the very tip of Lake Ontario, up at the top. And for people who grew up in the Great Lakes region or spent a lot of time there, the Great Lakes are really special. And I think everybody from that part of the world has some fantastic stories about it. So, Richard, I had to ask you, what is your greatest Great Lakes story or experience?
That's a fun question. Until recently, I was a boater, and I've had sailboats most of my adult life on the lake, and recently sold my 38-foot Bayliner motor yacht. That's because my wife and I are not quite as agile as we used to be. Fondest memory of the Great Lakes is actually sailing my 30-foot sailboat from Toronto up to Kingston, and being seasick from the moment of departure to arrival at the opposite end of the lake. So I guess I really was not made to be a sailor in the conventional sense, and it probably is why I migrated eventually to a big honking 38-foot motor yacht that was basically stable, and there was no danger of seasickness or spilling my drink.
So you said you were seasick the whole way. Give us how long is that journey?
Oh, it was about 2 days, and part of it was at night. And I remember that we didn't have GPS back in those days. We were using a compass and maps, and it was dark, and so we were sighting on like lighthouses, and trying to keep course. And I remember in the midst of this disaster, we were sighted on a red light, thinking it was a lighthouse, but turned out to be a laker, like one of these big boats that ships ore. And unfortunately, the laker was moving in a direction which was not in sympathy with the way we wanted to go. And so, but when dawn came around, we realized that we were pointed in the wrong direction. In fact, had we kept in the same direction, we would have probably ended in Rochester. So there you go. Really not a good sailor.
So, for people who haven't ever spent any time in there, I think a lot of people do not realize how big the Great Lakes are. And as you mentioned, there are these vessels that go from, in some cases, Duluth in the west,
Yeah.
all the way out to the ocean and points beyond.
Yeah.
I think the largest one I've ever seen was 1,000 feet long, and that's what the Sioux Locks can accommodate.
Right.
That's a big boat for people who
Yep.
haven't seen it before. Now you can on your phone track where these things are. And so if you were an amateur sailor, the way you guys were going across, it'd be pretty easy to know what was happening. How did you do that when you were moving this boat? Like, it had to be totally on site, right?
Well, you have a compass, and you just try and shoot a line that's in alignment with where you want to go, and there's waypoints, etc. But that's what we did in the old days.
Not a fan of going up against 900-foot iron ore carriers, though. That would not be me. That's a good story, though.
I don't
like
know
that.
what was worse, the danger of running into a large ship, or the pain of being seasick, and being in charge of the boat at the same time. So yeah. I remember too that we had a series of maps, and I used to keep the maps in a big giant dustbin. And unfortunately, in the middle, while we were all being sick, someone was looking for a place to be sick and saw this big dustbin. So that added additional discomfort to this particular sailing trip.
It's one of those things, though, that at the time was not funny and now probably is hilarious.
No, exactly.
So we've got one more big thing we have to ask you about. You are, of course, the 2024-25 Cross USA lecturer. And for people not familiar with this program, GI started it in 2010. And it was to take a top level, a world-class lecture, bring it out to our chapters. Our chapters bid to host the person, and then the lecturer tours the nation and gives lectures throughout the year. And it's a happy experience, and everybody has a good time. At least I think that's how it goes. Richard, what is the most exciting thing for you about being this year's Cross USA lecturer?
Well, first of all, it's a huge honor. So I was delighted from that point of view. But, I like traveling, and I like talking and delivering lectures to like-minded professionals and professors and interested students. And, I like the opportunity to share my work. The first lecture, and the only one to date, actually, was at Texas AMU. And a special treat that I had was they locked me in a room with graduate students with none of their professors present. And we had a question and answer period, which was really sweet. And they were able to ask me questions about different career paths, because I have had experience in consulting and in academia, and what are the pros and cons and this type of thing. And then some of them had, issues that they wanted to discuss. And I found that particularly rewarding, to be able to do that and to be able to share my experiences with them. I was able to give them advice like, if you go into the academic stream, work with people, work in teams, be collaborative. And this is based on the very good experience that I've had with the Geoengineering Center at Queen's RMC. And warning them, don't try to be a lone ranger. There's a lot of academics that are out there. They don't want to talk to anybody. They don't want to share anything. And this is a path to irrelevancy. So these are the type of things that we are able to talk about.
That's fantastic. So, for all of our viewers out there, keep your eyes peeled for the schedule of Cross USA lectures throughout the year. There are usually many. You may see Richard literally or figuratively on the road somewhere at one of these lectures on the way there, on the way back. We always do a couple in the summer at the end of the lecturer's year. They're live streamed on the YouTube channel. So we'll be sure to get information about those out to everybody next spring. And may you have many happy experiences as the lecture this year. Everybody always comes back and says it was a good time. We are universal in that way. So, I mentioned we had so many things to hit today. The final one is, again, this is one of our 2 holiday episodes. And so we would be remiss if we did not close with a question that went something like this. Richard, what is your favorite holiday tradition?
Actually, my wife and I like to go to a resort or travel this time of year, just the pair of us, to rekindle our romance, and for me to make penance for the time that I'm traveling and lecturing and being away from home. So we often go to places like Florida or the Bahamas or Barbados, and we particularly like these small cruise boats, the ones that have 250 passengers, etc. It's a very personal experience. So we'll often go on one of those. And this gives us time also to warm up, because it's starting to get a little bitter here this time of year. And of course, we have family. We have 2 children, and we have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter. And this grumpy old professor loves to spend time with small people.
So what's your favorite one out of all the resorts or these little cruises that you've been on? Do you have one to recommend to people?
When it comes to cruises, like cruise lines, we don't like the big, princess cruises where you have 20,000 people on boats and lots of out of control kids. We go on a cruise liner that's adults only, and like I said, 250 to 300 people. And they, every day you end up at a different island. And so you have the option of staying on board, or you can go to the island and do touristy things. And this boat that we go on, you can go up on the bridge any time of day, except when they're coming in and out of harbor, and you can talk to the crew.
Oh, wow.
And so we find that is one of our favorite choices. But every now and then we'll just stay on land somewhere. We particularly like Barbados. We've been there. In fact, we got married in Barbados. We eloped, went to Barbados and got married there. So that has warm memories for both of us.
So the last follow-up, I think, for me is when you were talking about the Panama Canal book earlier, you mentioned that you guys had gone on a cruise that went through the Panama Canal. As a civil engineer, what was that experience like for you? And was there anything that surprised you about it?
Well, what I liked about it was that, when you go through the canal, you're right there with the lock. So you can see exactly all of the mechanics that you hear about with these locks. In addition, there are museums, etc., that are at the Panama City end of the Panama Canal, and you can go in there and you can again get more information. You go through some of these very famous cuts. One of the challenges for the canal was excavation,
right?
And so you actually get to drive, so to speak, right through these cuts that were hugely unstable, and a real challenge for our soil mechanics forebears. And so you really get a sense of history. So that was really special.
I guess I keep saying it's the final follow-up question, and I keep coming up with one more. For anybody who's interested in doing a little bit of engineering tourism and going down there to the canal, do they have staff on site who can answer more technical questions about it? Because I'm sure they get these things thrown at them.
Yes, they do. And in fact, this particular cruise line, and I'm sure it's the same with other ones, they always have experts on board. And so you can And it can be on a number of subjects. I mean, they could be talking about the history of the islands that you're going through, or sometimes it could be on the history of the flora and fauna in the areas you're going to. And so it's very relaxed and informative. So we enjoy that part of these cruises as well.
That's amazing. So we got a lot of endorsements from you today, Richard. And I think that I didn't know that I expected that today. So that is a fantastic thing to add to the show. We had St. Nick over your shoulder there. And of course, as we record this, it is St. Nicholas Day in the world. Great day to record the first holiday episode of Director's Cut. Oh, Richard, you brought the hat too. You're ready to go.
You can't be the only one being silly.
Usually that's the way it goes. But you made it through all 10 questions. You made it through all the bonus questions. You did a great job. We learned so much about you today. For our viewers, if you liked what you saw, and you're here at the end, so you probably did, again, click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. I was, of course, remiss to not mention our special 200th episode contest. You can get a link to that and information down in the show notes. We want to hear from you, and we'll put together a special show in the new year with your submissions. Whew. We will have one more holiday episode of Director's Cut next week. Until then, just enjoy this visual that we've got here with the tree, my Home Alone shirt, and Richard's hat, and the St. Nick. Richard, thanks again for doing this. I hope it was a good time.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Geo-Institute. It's been a pleasure.
And we will see everybody with the final Director's Cut of 2024 next week.